The evening air was thick with a silence that seemed to swallow even the faintest sounds. On Maple Street, where rows of aging brick houses stood shoulder to shoulder, a strange tension hung, a quiet unease that no one could quite explain. But for Sarah Monroe, that silence was more than unsettling. It was suffocating. Sarah had moved to Maple Street just 6 months earlier, hopeful for a fresh start. At 32, she was a woman quietly rebuilding her life after years marked by loss and disappointment. Her small, modest house was her sanctuary, a place where she could heal from the fractures left by her past. But what had started as a hopeful new chapter was about to unravel in ways she could never imagine. From the outside, Sarah's life seemed simple. An elementary school teacher, single, with no children but a close-knit group of friends who often gathered in the evenings to share stories and laughter. But inside, her world was far more complex. She carried the weight of a fractured family, estranged from her parents after a bitter fallout. The scars of a painful breakup with Mark, a man she had loved fiercely, still lingered in her quiet moments. She was someone who had learned to protect herself by keeping her walls high, yet she longed for connection more than anything. The neighborhood knew Sarah as friendly but reserved, someone who smiled easily but kept her distance. It was a life carefully managed, a fragile balance between hope and fear. Then, the whispers started. At first, they were just neighborhood gossip, a flicker of something strange near Sarah's house. Strange noises at night. Shadows glimpsed through curtains. The faint scent of smoke, even when no fire was present. Maybe it's just the old pipes, people said, or could be the wind. But the stories grew, carried by the murmur of the close-knit community. One evening, Sarah was sitting alone in her living room, the dim glow of a single lamp casting long shadows on the walls. The sound of a soft tapping came from the kitchen window. She froze, heart pounding, breath catching in her throat. When she looked, there was nothing, just the empty street bathed in moonlight. Yet the feeling that someone was watching her didn't fade. Over the next few days, the incidents escalated. Objects moved from their places, lights flickered unpredictably, and a cold draft swept through the house even with all windows closed. Sarah confided in her best friend Laura, who dismissed it as stress or exhaustion. But Sarah knew it was something else, something deeply personal. Late one night, unable to sleep, Sarah sat by her window staring out into the empty street. The moon was high, the sky a blanket of dark blue. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the end of the road, someone she hadn't seen in years. David, her younger brother. David had been a ghost in her life since their childhood, a brother who vanished after their parents' bitter divorce and a family scandal that left wounds no one spoke about. He had disappeared into a haze of addiction and poor decisions, drifting through years of silence and broken promises. Seeing him now, standing under the streetlight, something deep within Sarah stirred. A rush of memories, of laughter, fights, shared secrets, and a bond frayed but never fully broken. She stepped outside, heart pounding, the chill of the night sharp against her skin. "David," she called softly. He turned, eyes shadowed but unmistakably his. "Sarah," he said, voice rough. They talked for hours that night, walking down Maple Street, peeling back layers of pain and regret. David confessed that he had come back to make amends, to rebuild what they had lost. For a brief moment, hope glimmered. But the peace was fleeting. 2 nights later, the haunting grew louder, more insistent. Sarah awoke to the sound of glass breaking downstairs. She rushed down to find the front door wide open, shattered glass sparkling on the floor like frozen tears. The house was ransacked, drawers pulled out, belongings scattered. But nothing was stolen. Just before the police arrived, Sarah found a small, folded note tucked beneath a broken picture frame. The words were scrawled hastily in a shaky hand. "You can't hide from the truth," It's closer than you think." Panic swallowed her. Who was sending these messages? What truth? The investigation uncovered no signs of forced entry beyond the front door, which seemed almost unlocked. Neighbors reported seeing a hooded figure lurking near her house at odd hours. Fear wrapped itself around Sarah like a noose. Then, the bizarre twists began. Detective Marcus, assigned to the case, was a man of quiet intensity. He didn't believe in ghosts or hauntings, but the case disturbed him. In a neighborhood with no history of violence or crime, why target Sarah? And why leave cryptic notes with no apparent demand or motive? As the days wore on, Sarah began to receive more messages, each more disturbing than the last. Pictures of her childhood home, torn photographs of her family, and finally, a voice recording on her phone. The voice was faint but unmistakably David's. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I never meant for this to happen." The recording shattered something inside her. Was David involved? Was he trying to warn her? Or was someone else using his name? Sarah's fears deepened when Laura found a hidden compartment behind the bookshelf in Sarah's living room. Inside was a dusty old diary that belonged to their mother, long thought lost. The pages revealed secrets no one expected, twisted family betrayals, debts hidden in shadows, and a chilling mention of someone desperate enough to destroy everything. One entry stood out. "If only I could protect my children from the darkness that haunts our blood." The family's past was a tangled web, and the haunting in Sarah's house was not supernatural. It was born of human desperation and vengeance. One night, after a particularly chilling message left on her answering machine, a series of strange, almost childlike whispers, Sarah found herself face to face with a hooded figure in her backyard. The confrontation was raw, electric with tension. "You don't know what you're involved in," the figure said, voice shaking. "This is bigger than you." Sarah's heart hammered, every instinct screaming to run. But she stood her ground. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure pulled back the hood, and the face was not David's. It was someone she had never expected, someone close, someone trusted. "You never listened," the figure whispered, eyes filled with sorrow and rage. "Now, you'll have to face what you ignored." Before Sarah could react, the figure vanished into the night, leaving only a chilling breeze behind. The next morning, Sarah discovered an old, faded photograph slipped under her door. It showed her, David, and a third person, someone she barely remembered but whose face stirred a deep, buried fear. As she studied the photo, a new message buzzed on her phone. "It's not over. It never was." And then, silence. The haunting had only just begun. For anyone watching this, the question remains, what was the truth Sarah was so desperately trying to escape? And who was the person in the hood? Was this a reckoning born from family secrets, or something darker, rooted in a painful past no one dared to confront? As the days pass, the shadows on Maple Street grow longer, and Sarah's story hangs in the balance, caught between hope and horror, trust and betrayal. If you think you know the truth, or if something in Sarah's story unsettles you, stay tuned. Because the next chapter promises to unravel everything you thought you understood, and leave you questioning the very nature of trust itself. The line between victim and perpetrator is thinner than we imagine, and in Sarah Monroe's world, the haunting was never about ghosts. It was about the secrets we bury, the lies we live with, and the desperate lengths people will go to protect, or destroy, the ones they love. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of Maple Street, the real story waits to be told. The morning light seeped hesitantly through the cracked blinds of Sarah Monroe's living room, casting long, jagged shadows across the scattered remains of the previous night's chaos. Her eyes fluttered open, the weight of exhaustion pressing down hard, but there was no relief in rest. The strange messages, the cryptic notes, the eerie whispers, they clung to her like a suffocating fog. But today was not a day for rest. It was a day to dig deeper, to uncover what had been buried beneath years of silence and deception. Sarah sat on the worn, threadbare sofa, the old photograph from under her door clutched tightly in her trembling hands. The image, yellowed with age and frayed at the edges, showed three figures standing in front of the old family home. Her, David, and a woman whose face was blurred but whose presence seemed to radiate something Sarah could not ignore. She traced the vague outline of the stranger's silhouette with her finger, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. Who was she? That question burned in Sarah's mind like a wildfire, and she knew the answer would unlock more than just a name. It would tear open the fragile fabric of her past and expose secrets that might be better left untouched. Her first stop was the Public Records Office, a cramped, musty room in the town hall that smelled of paper and dust. Sarah had avoided it for years, afraid of what she might find, but today, fueled by a cocktail of fear and determination, she forced herself inside. The clerk, a grey-haired man with sharp eyes and a habit of folding his hands tightly over the counter, recognized her immediately. "Ms. Monroe," he said quietly, as if he had been expecting her. "I wasn't sure you'd come back." Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat. "I need to see everything about my family, the divorce papers, birth certificates, anything that might explain this," she said, sliding the photograph across the counter. The clerk studied the photo for a long moment before nodding. "There's some old case files here, about a woman named Evelyn Harper. She was connected to your family." Evelyn Harper. The name sent a jolt through Sarah. She had heard whispers about Evelyn in the past, an old family friend, or so she had thought. But the records told a different story. Evelyn had been the live-in housekeeper at their childhood home, but the lines blurred quickly. The documents revealed a complicated relationship with Sarah's mother, Margaret Monroe. There were notes about a bitter argument, threats of exposure, and even a restraining order filed by Evelyn against Margaret just months before the family imploded. Sarah flipped through the pages, eyes scanning the faded letters, court transcripts, and personal letters. One line caught her attention. "If the truth about David is revealed, nothing will be the same." The mention of David's name sent a chill down her spine. What truth? What was it about her brother that had been so devastating? Sarah's phone buzzed sharply, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Laura, her best friend, with a text that read simply, "We need to talk. I found something. Come over." Sarah's heart hammered. Laura had always been the one anchor in the storm, but lately, even she seemed shaken. At Laura's apartment, the air was heavy with tension. Laura handed Sarah a small, worn envelope, its seal broken and edges crumpled from repeated opening. "It was hidden in your mother's things," Laura said softly. "I didn't want to believe it, but it's all here." Inside the envelope were a series of letters, handwritten notes between Margaret Monroe and Evelyn Harper. The letters spoke of secrets buried in the past, promises to protect a family secret, and pleas for forgiveness. But the tone shifted abruptly in the last letter. "I can't keep this silent anymore. David's actions have consequences. If you don't act, I will." Sarah's hands shook as she read. The words hinted at something unspeakable, something that had torn her family apart and pushed David to the edges of society. But what exactly had David done? Determined to find answers, Sarah reached out to an old family friend who had been close to her parents, a man named Henry Collins. Henry was known for his sharp mind and loyalty to the Monroe family. If anyone could shed light on the mystery, it was him. The meeting was arranged at a quiet cafe downtown. Henry arrived promptly, his eyes weary but kind. "Sarah," he greeted, "I've heard about what's happening. I want to help." Over steaming cups of coffee, Henry began to unravel the story that had been kept from Sarah for years. David had been involved in a tragic accident during their childhood, one that the family had desperately tried to cover up. A neighborhood boy, Jamie Clark, had died under suspicious circumstances during a summer day when David was just 10 years old. Officially, it was an accident, an unfortunate fall while playing near the old quarry. But Henry's voice dropped as he explained the whispers that had circulated behind closed doors. There were rumors that David was involved in a fight with Jamie, that things got out of hand. But your mother and Evelyn worked to keep the truth hidden. They feared what would happen to David, to the family name. Sarah's mind reeled. Could this tragedy be the root of the haunting? The cryptic threats? The lingering shadows that refused to lift? That night, as Sarah lay in bed, memories flooded her. The laughter of children, the tension in the air on those long-ago summer days, the fearful glances exchanged between adults. She realized that the haunting was never about ghosts. It was about guilt, betrayal, and a desperate attempt to bury the past. But the past had claws, and it was dragging her back in. Days later, Sarah received an anonymous package at her doorstep. Inside was a small, leather-bound journal, worn and fragile. The handwriting inside was unfamiliar but intimate, filled with raw confessions, anguish, and a terrifying promise. If the truth dies, so does everyone involved. Sarah's breath caught. The journal detailed plans to expose the hidden sins of the Monroe family, and chillingly, it mentioned surveillance, someone watching her every move, knowing her every step. The final entry was dated just 2 days ago. In the following weeks, strange occurrences escalated again. Neighbors reported hearing muffled screams late at night. Sarah found scratches on her bedroom window, deep and fresh, as if someone, or something, had tried to claw its way in. She began to question everything and everyone, even those she trusted most. Laura's behavior grew erratic, avoiding questions and disappearing for hours without explanation. When confronted, Laura only whispered, "There are things you don't know. Things I wish I never found." One evening, Sarah's phone rang, the screen flashing an unknown number. She answered hesitantly. A voice, distorted and mechanical, whispered, "You're closer than you think. But beware, some truths are deadly." The line went dead. Sarah's fragile grip on reality began to slip. Sleep became a rare luxury as nightmares invaded her nights. Visions of drowning, dark faces, and a shadowy figure with hollow eyes reaching for her. One night, compelled by a restless urge, Sarah ventured to the old Monroe family home, the place she had avoided for years. The house was empty, abandoned since her parents left town after the scandal. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay, but also a strange energy, as if the walls themselves held their breath. In the attic, Sarah discovered a locked chest. Using an old key she had found in the journal's pages, she opened it to reveal a collection of photographs, letters, and a small box wrapped in faded velvet. Inside the box was a blood-stained locket, its delicate chain broken, its surface scratched. The locket held a tiny photograph of Jamie Clark. A scream tore from Sarah's throat, echoing through the empty house. Suddenly, footsteps sounded behind her. She spun around, but no one was there. Weeks passed, and the story took another dark turn. Sarah's brother, David, vanished again. This time, no one knew where he had gone. The police found his apartment empty, except for a single note. "I'm sorry. I had no choice." Desperation clawed at Sarah's heart. Had David been protecting her all along? Or was he the source of the darkness threatening to consume them both? Then, the chilling discovery that shattered everything. A hidden camera, found in Sarah's living room, captured footage that no one expected. Footage of someone entering her home in the dead of night, moving silently through shadows. But the most disturbing part was the figure's identity. It was Sarah herself. Only, it wasn't. The grainy footage showed a woman dressed like Sarah, but her eyes were hollow, her movements jerky and unnatural. She whispered words Sarah didn't recognize, and placed a folded piece of paper on the kitchen table. The camera cut out before the message could be revealed. Haunted by the footage, Sarah confronted Laura. Tears streamed down Laura's face as she confessed a secret she had been hiding for years, one that involved a forgotten twin sister, separated at birth, lost in the chaos of the Monroe family collapse. "Her name was Eliza," Laura whispered. "They kept her hidden because she was different. Some said she was dangerous." Sarah's world tilted on its axis. Could this twin be the figure from the footage? Could Eliza be behind the threats, the hauntings, the unraveling of everything Sarah held dear? The question hung heavy in the air. Then, one night, as Sarah sat alone in her living room, the lights flickered violently. A cold presence filled the room. The front door creaked open slowly, despite Sarah being certain she had locked it. She turned to see a figure standing in the doorway. Eliza. Her eyes met Sarah's with a piercing intensity that chilled her to the bone. "I'm here to finish what was started," Eliza said softly, voice dripping with a chilling mix of sorrow and menace. Before Sarah could speak, Eliza raised a hand, and everything went black. For those watching now, the question is not just what happened to Sarah Monroe, but what lies ahead for her, and for all of us tangled in this web of family secrets, haunting legacies, and unimaginable betrayal. Who is Eliza, really? And why has she returned? The answer waits, just beyond the shadows where the line between reality and nightmare will blur, and the truth will come at a cost no one could have foreseen. Because in this story, the most terrifying monsters are the ones hiding within. The world beneath Sarah Monroe's eyelids was a swirling haze of darkness and fragmented memories. When she finally awoke, the cold bite of unfamiliar air hit her skin, pulling her fully into consciousness. She was lying on a floor rough with dust and splinters, her head throbbing like a relentless drum. Her eyes adjusted slowly. She was in the attic of the old Monroe family home, the same attic where, weeks before, she had discovered the blood-stained locket. But this time, something was different. The air was thick, heavy with a strange metallic scent. Her breath came in shallow, uneven gasps. Before she could gather her bearings, the door creaked open. Eliza stepped inside, her figure silhouetted against the faint light from the hallway. Her eyes, dark and unblinking, fixed on Sarah with an unsettling calm. The twin sister she never knew existed, the shadow that had haunted her life, was now standing just feet away. "I'm sorry, Sarah," Eliza said quietly, her voice echoing with a strange mix of sorrow and resolve. "I never wanted it to come to this." Sarah struggled to speak, but found her throat dry and tight. Why are you doing this? Why now?" Eliza's lips curled into a faint, almost bitter smile. "Because the truth has a way of clawing its way out. It can't be hidden forever. And you need to understand what was done to us, what was stolen." The story spilled out, raw and jagged, like shards of glass cutting through years of silence. Eliza revealed that after the family scandal, the death of Jamie Clark, the fractures in the Monroe household, she had been taken away, hidden, sent to live with distant relatives far from the prying eyes of the town and the dark shadows of their past. The official story was that she had died in infancy, but in truth, she had been erased to protect the family's reputation. But Eliza was no ordinary child. Diagnosed with a rare neurological condition that affected her behavior and perception, she was labeled dangerous and uncontrollable. The family feared her, especially Margaret, their mother, who had chosen to bury her instead of embracing her. Years of isolation had forged a bitterness inside Eliza, a hunger for justice, or perhaps revenge, that grew with every whispered lie and every door slammed shut in her face. "I watched from the shadows," Eliza continued, "as you lived the life I was denied, You were the perfect daughter, the one who escaped. But you don't know the whole story, Sarah. You never did." Sarah's mind reeled. Every moment of the last weeks, the hauntings, the notes, the footage, now made a grim sort of sense. It wasn't ghosts that haunted her. It was family. It was Eliza, reaching out in her own broken way. Eliza led Sarah deeper into the attic, to a small trunk she had brought with her. Inside were mementos of a childhood forgotten. Drawings, faded photographs, and a journal, one that belonged to Eliza herself. The pages were filled with fragmented thoughts, raw emotions, and cryptic references to the experiment. "What experiment?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Eliza's expression darkened. "Our mother. She wasn't just trying to hide me. She was trying to fix me. The journals and letters you found, they barely scratched the surface. There were treatments, drugs, therapies no one should have endured. I was a prisoner in my own body and mind." Sarah traced her fingers over the diary's pages. The words revealed a horror beneath the surface of the family's polished facade. Unspeakable tests and injections, secret therapies designed to suppress Eliza's condition. She was trapped in a nightmare that no one had dared to speak of. Eliza's bitterness was not just about being abandoned. It was about being experimented on, manipulated, turned into something she was not. Their reunion was raw, painful, and fragile. Sarah wanted to reach out, to heal the rift between them, but Eliza's anger was a wall too high to climb. "I didn't come back to forgive," Eliza whispered. "I came back to make sure the truth is heard, to make you face what our family buried under lies." As the hours passed, they uncovered more evidence. Documents, photos, hidden recordings. The family's secrets were more monstrous than Sarah had ever imagined. Among the revelations was a recording of a heated argument between Margaret and Evelyn Harper, the housekeeper, on the night before Jamie Clark's death. Evelyn had threatened to expose the truth about the accident and the cover-up. Margaret's voice was cold and commanding. "If you speak, I swear I will destroy you. No one will believe you, and your name will be ruined." The weight of betrayal crushed Sarah's chest. The woman she had trusted, her own mother, had been at the heart of a conspiracy that shattered innocent lives. But there was more. The recordings hinted at Evelyn's own desperation and a possible secret agenda. Had Evelyn been a victim? Or had she become a perpetrator in her own right? Sarah's confusion deepened. In the days that followed, Sarah and Eliza's uneasy alliance grew. Together, they began piecing together the puzzle of their family's dark history, but each discovery only deepened the mystery. Strange occurrences continued around Sarah's home. Neighbors spoke of shadowy figures lurking, and the feeling of being watched grew unbearable. One evening, Sarah returned home to find her door ajar. Inside, a message was scrawled in red paint on her living room wall. "The truth will drown you." Terrified, she called the police, but no evidence was found beyond the message itself. Then, the unimaginable happened. David resurfaced, disheveled, gaunt, and haunted. He reached out to Sarah in a frantic phone call, pleading for her help. "I'm in trouble, Sarah," he whispered. "They're after me." "Who?" Sarah demanded. "I can't say. Not yet. But I need you. Please." Sarah and Eliza rushed to find David, following his vague clues to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Inside, the air was thick with decay and the stench of neglect. Shadows clung to every corner, swallowing the weak beam of their flashlight. David emerged from the darkness, his eyes wild with fear. "They've been watching me ever since I left. The same people who tortured Eliza. The ones who want to erase all of us." Sarah's heart pounded. "Who are they?" Before David could answer, The sound of footsteps echoed, rapid, approaching. The three of them froze. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. A man, tall and imposing, face obscured by the hood of a heavy jacket. "You shouldn't have come here," the man said coldly. David stepped in front of Sarah protectively. "Leave her out of this." The stranger's voice dropped to a whisper. "There's no one out of this, David. None of you." The confrontation spiraled quickly. A struggle ensued, chaos erupting in the cold, silent warehouse. In the confusion, Sarah glimpsed a badge on the man's belt, a law enforcement emblem. "Who are you?" she cried. The man's eyes flickered with something unreadable. "I'm here to make sure the past stays buried." Days later, Sarah found herself back in her home, shaken and broken. The walls that once felt like a sanctuary now seemed to close in on her. Eliza was gone. David was missing again. And Sarah was left with only one certainty. The people who had hidden the truth for so long would stop at nothing to keep it that way. The final, chilling discovery came unexpectedly. A package was left on Sarah's doorstep. Inside, a single item, a cracked mirror. On the back, a message scratched deep into the glass. "Look closer, Sarah. The reflection lies." As she stared into the fragmented glass, Sarah saw not only her own face, but something else behind her, a shadow moving just beyond the frame. And then, a whisper. "You're next." For those following Sarah Monroe's story, the question now is not only who can be trusted, but what kind of darkness lurks behind the faces we know best. Eliza's return was just the beginning. The past is not finished with Sarah. It is closing in, faster than anyone could have feared. What does the cracked mirror reveal? Who sent it? And what fate awaits Sarah as the line between truth and deception blurs beyond recognition? Stay tuned as we plunge deeper into the web of lies, danger, and family betrayal that threatens to consume them all. Every secret will be questioned, every ally may become an enemy, and the haunting will reach its terrifying crescendo. Because sometimes, the greatest horrors are not what we see, but what we fail to see. The cracked mirror lay heavy in Sarah Monroe's hands, its fractured surface catching the dim morning light like broken shards of a shattered past. Each jagged line seemed to map the fractures in her family's story, fractures that had deepened over years of silence, secrets, and betrayal. Now, standing at the edge of the storm, she knew there was no turning back. The pieces of the puzzle had finally come together, but the picture they formed was darker than anything she could have imagined. It all began with a whisper, the whisper that followed her since Eliza's chilling arrival and the strange notes scrawled in red paint. The shadow behind the mirror was no longer just a ghost in her mind. It was a very real threat, closing in with each passing day. Sarah's life had become a labyrinth of fear, grief, and fragile hope, and now the final chapter was unfolding. Her first step was to contact Detective Marcus, the man who had quietly but relentlessly followed her case from the start. His calm professionalism was the anchor she desperately needed amidst the chaos. When she handed him the cracked mirror, Marcus studied it carefully. "This is the key, Sarah. Whoever left this knows exactly what they're doing. It's a message and a warning." Together, they dove into the investigation, combing through every scrap of evidence, every secret note, and every shadow from the past. But it wasn't until a breakthrough came from an unexpected source that the truth began to unravel. One evening, Marcus received an anonymous tip directing him to a small storage unit on the outskirts of town. Inside, investigators found a collection of disturbing items, journals, photographs, and a detailed timeline of the Monroe family's history. But more chilling was the discovery of a carefully hidden room behind a false wall. The room was sterile and cold, with faint stains on the floor and the remnants of medical equipment. It was clear someone had been kept there, controlled, monitored, experimented on. Sarah's breath caught as she realized this was where Eliza had been imprisoned all those years ago. Among the items was a bundle of letters, penned by Evelyn Harper. In them, Evelyn confessed to being manipulated and coerced by Margaret Monroe to silence Eliza's cries for help. The letters revealed a web of deception that implicated not only Margaret, but also a small group of trusted town officials, desperate to protect the Monroe name at any cost. But the most shocking revelation was the name that kept appearing: Dr. Thomas Gray, a local physician once respected but long suspected of unethical practices. Detective Marcus traced Dr. Gray's movements and discovered that he had disappeared shortly after the scandal broke decades ago. However, a recent sighting placed him in a neighboring state, living under an assumed identity. Meanwhile, Sarah struggled with the emotional turmoil of reconnecting with her brother David, whose own struggles had been a tragic thread woven throughout their family's pain. After months of searching, David was found and taken into protective custody. His testimony would prove crucial. David recounted the horrors of his childhood, how Dr. Gray had subjected Eliza to cruel experiments in secret, how their mother had turned a blind eye, and how the town had buried the truth to protect the powerful. His voice broke as he spoke of the guilt he carried, the accidents and silence that had shattered lives. "It wasn't just an accident," David confessed. "Jamie Clark's death was part of it. Dr. Gray pushed things too far. I tried to stop it, but no one listened." With this testimony, authorities moved swiftly. Dr. Thomas Gray was apprehended in a quiet suburban home, shocked to find law enforcement at his door. During interrogation, he remained cold and unrepentant, claiming he had been trying to fix what nature had broken, that his methods, though extreme, were for the greater good. His arrest sent shockwaves through the community, and the trial that followed became a national sensation, an expose of hidden abuses, the cost of silence, and the darkness that can fester behind closed doors. The courtroom was packed the day Sarah took the stand. Her voice, steady but raw, carried the weight of years of pain and resilience. She spoke of the family secrets, the suffering of Eliza, and the betrayal by those sworn to protect. David's testimony brought tears to many, a young man haunted by guilt but seeking redemption. Witnesses came forward, former patients, nurses, and town residents, painting a picture of a man who had abused his power and trust. Despite Dr. Gray's attempts to justify his actions, the jury found him guilty on multiple counts: unlawful imprisonment, torture, manslaughter in the case of Jamie Clark, and a litany of human rights violations. The sentencing was swift and severe. Dr. Gray was condemned to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As the judge delivered the verdict, the courtroom fell silent, the weight of justice settling like a long-awaited balm. Sarah felt a bittersweet release. The man who had cast a shadow over her family's life was finally behind bars, but the scars, emotional, psychological, and physical, would take much longer to heal. In the months following the trial, Sarah dedicated herself to healing and advocacy. With Eliza's support, she established a foundation for victims of medical abuse and families torn apart by secrets, determined to shine a light on the darkness and help others find their way out. David, too, began rebuilding his life, seeking therapy and reconnecting with estranged family members, determined to break the cycle of silence and shame. The Monroe family story became a symbol, a cautionary tale of how fear and denial can breed destruction, but also of the power of truth and forgiveness. Sarah often visited the old family home, now restored and opened as a community center. The attic where she had confronted her past was transformed into a memorial room, quiet, reflective, and filled with reminders of resilience. One afternoon, as she sat in that very room, Sarah gazed out the window at the neighborhood she once feared. The air was warm and filled with the hum of life. She allowed herself a small, genuine smile. The haunting was over. But in the quiet moments, when the world seemed still, Sarah still felt a whisper of the past, a reminder that healing is a journey, not a destination. She understood now that the darkest shadows often live inside us, shaped by the choices we make and the secrets we keep. Her story was no longer one of fear, but of courage. For those who followed Sarah Monroe's journey, her story ends here, not with silence, but with a voice rising above the darkness. A voice calling for truth, justice, and above all, compassion. Because sometimes, the most powerful hauntings are the ones we carry within ourselves. And the bravest among us are those who face them head-on.